Hey, this is Moa Smokes, and today we're gonna do something a little bit different. Now, you're used to me doing reviews or tutorials, and I'm sitting here and I have my shisha and I'm smoking and I'm loving my life. But right now, the shisha has to wait for after this. I didn't do that on purpose. It has nothing to do with the shirt I'm wearing, I promise. Basically, what we're gonna be talking about today is common myths and misconceptions that you've heard about shisha or hookah, if you prefer to call it that. My goal is to debunk them as thoroughly as possible. I'm leaving a table of contents in the description, so that way if there's a specific one you want to jump to, feel free to do that. If not, feel free to be, kind of entertained throughout the whole video of me talking through all this stuff. So the whole idea for this video came up because I kept hearing people ask questions like, oh, do I need a bigger bowl for a longer session? Or, oh, should I be putting milk in my base to get bigger clouds or thicker clouds? And those types of questions, they're great questions to ask because that means you're curious, but also I wanna make sure that you get the right information. So you go into it as informed as possible. Now, I put up a question on my Instagram at Moa Smokes. Feel free to follow me if you don't. Also, if you don't, why aren't you following me? But basically, I got all these responses, and it's cool because a lot of the responses are topics I was planning on talking about anyway, but a handful of them were topics that I hadn't really thought to talk about. So it was nice because, now I get to talk about them. So without further ado, let's go into the first one. So the first myth or misconception is a pretty common one, and I feel like it's a good one to start on, and that is people washing or patting dry their shisha flavor. Washing was kind of new to me. I hadn't really heard of that until I saw videos of people literally washing their shisha flavor, taking it out of the container, running it under water, wringing it dry, dropping it on a napkin, just getting their bounty or whatever and absorbing all of the moisture from the shisha flavor. I thought it was a joke, and then I realized it wasn't a joke, and then I was laughing for a different reason. Just to break it down, what you get when you open up a shisha container or a shisha flavor container is finely cut, sometimes finely cut, but cut shisha, and it's coated in either molasses or glycerin or honey, depending on what brand it is. And the benefit of those things is that they actually make it to where your shisha flavor is heat resistant, and also it helps lock in the flavor. When you wash it and rinse it and pat it dry, you're taking all of those preservatives and all of those heat resistant attributes away from your shisha flavor. So that's kind of why it was funny to me. It seemed counterproductive. In terms of patting it dry, obviously I understand that some shisha containers come with a bunch of molasses or glycerin built up or honey built up either at the bottom or at the top, depending on where the container is stored and how the container is stored. Typically what you want to do when you open a brand new container is take a fork or a toothpick or your hands and mix it up thoroughly. Make sure that you evenly distribute the molasses, make sure that you evenly distribute the glycerin, the honey, whatever it's coated in, make sure it's evenly distributed. And if for some reason you have a particularly juicy container, you can pat dry lightly just to get excess molasses or glycerin off of it, and that's it. Don't push down, don't try to wring it out, don't try to have dry shisha flavor. The problem is it's gonna burn quickly. It's gonna burn a lot quicker than it would have if you had left it the way it was, and also it's not gonna be as flavorful. All right, now the second one is cutting the shisha flavor. Again, I see videos of people taking their shears to brand new shisha containers, they open them up and I'm like, okay, you use scissors for that. And then they dump out the flavor and then they just start cutting it. Unless the shisha flavor is particularly large, or unless the cut is irregular from what the brand usually does, you really shouldn't be cutting it. There are a couple of exceptions. What comes to mind is Alfejer's newer brands or newer containers. I feel like the leaves have gotten a little bit bigger, so I could see somebody cutting those. I still don't, but I would understand it if they did. But for brands like Element or Trifecta or Haze or Eternal or Tangiers, you don't really need to cut them. They're the size they are for a reason, and it's to help you pack them the way that they're supposed to be packed. Tangiers is finely cut. You're supposed to dense pack Tangiers. It's a lot easier to dense pack something that's finely cut. Trifecta, Haze, Element, all of these brands are more towards a normal pack where you want to just drop the flavor in there in your bowl, and you want the air pocket, so the leaves are slightly bigger than Tangiers. And then again with Alfejer, it's a normal pack, so bigger leaves, just make sure that there are air pockets there. They're cut that way for a reason. Fumari comes to mind. That's more of a semi-fluff pack where You lightly fluff the flavor into the bowl, and then you like gently like move the leaves slightly to get them to where they need to be, and you're good to go. And again, their cut is a little bit bigger than the other ones I just mentioned for the normal pack, and it's like that for a reason. All right, now the third thing we're gonna talk about, foil. People always go back and forth about whether it should be shiny side up or shiny side down, and I always go shiny side down, and the reason I do that is because I look at it like when you're storing food. Like pretend you're at a barbecue, the chicken just came off the grill, the burger just came off the grill. You're gonna put foil on your plate to keep the heat inside the plate. You put it shiny side down because the shiny side down, or the shiny side is reflective, reflects the heat, it keeps it that temperature. Whereas if the shiny side is up, it's not really keeping the heat the way it could be, and you're just reflecting the heat on the top, so your bowl gets hotter. The fourth question is, does more holes equal more smoke? The answer to that is, it kind of depends on your hole pattern. So I think before I answer the question, I take a step back here and say, the way that you poke holes at the top of your bowl when you put the foil down kind of determines what your session is going to be like. So if you have a bunch of tiny holes like that are pinholes, you're probably going to have a little bit more restriction because the holes are so small that, you know, air can't really pass through. But also it's not going to be good because it's going to overheat really quickly because you have so many tiny holes. Typically, what I like to do is I like to do a hole in the middle that kind of opens it up where the draw is more open. You don't have to do that. It's completely optional. Some people like to leave it closed to keep a little bit of restriction in there. And then I just do 2 rings of holes. Doing that kind of is the sweet spot, at least for me, in terms of heat regulation. Now, more holes means that more of your flavor is exposed to the heat. You can overheat your bowl easily. Less holes, maybe the heat won't flow or the air won't flow the way that it's supposed to. So really it's on you to find the sweet spot for you. Just because you have more holes doesn't mean you're gonna get more smoke. You might be getting more smoke because your bowl is getting hotter and you're smoking really hot shisha, but that's really the reasoning there. Now, a couple of exceptions to this. If you use the traditional method that Tangiers promotes or talks about, you put a lot of holes using like an oyster fork at the top of your foil, and you use Tangiers coals, which are lower heat than say coconut coals. Then you have lower heat coals, you have all of the holes in your foil. It's like that for a reason. Again, lower heat coals, more holes. You see where I'm going with this. So the next question is, are all bowls the same? And what I'm holding right now is an Egyptian clay bowl. This is the traditional bowl. You see this at shisha lounges, if you've been to a shisha lounge at all in your life. Or if you try to smoke and you went to a smoke shop and picked up a bowl, it probably looked like this. It's pretty thick, but the material that it's made out of is not it's not the best clay. Like, it does the job, like you can definitely smoke. It's just not the best at retaining heat. And it also takes a lot of shisha. What you're seeing more nowadays is the funnel bowl. And the funnel bowl just has one big hole in the middle of the spire. It has a trench right here where the flavor goes. And the nice thing about the funnel bowl is as it heats up, not only does it distribute the heat evenly, since it has a spire, as it heats up, the molasses isn't dripping down into your stem like it would with a traditional bowl that has holes at the bottom. Now, nothing against traditional bowls. I mean, they're called Egyptian bowls, so obviously I have a soft spot for them. There are like better, higher quality material Egyptian bowls out there now, or traditional bowls out there now. This is just an example of one that I got for 20 cents from Egypt, and this was actually one of my first Egyptian bowls, and I've just kept it for nostalgia. The next question is, in terms of smoke, which one are you gonna get more smoke out of? And the answer to that is, it depends on the quality of smoke that you want. A more modern bowl, like this is a Mason Shisha Gravel, it's the Moab edition, it's red. This is a more modern bowl, and it's made with really high quality materials. The clay that they use is very high quality. It's very good at retaining the heat. So you're definitely gonna get a longer session with less shisha using this. On this, you're gonna end up using more shisha, and you're probably gonna get a shorter session just because the heat will spike more often because of the materials used in the bowl. Now, in terms of the actual smoke part, I can get either of these to smoke and get a lot of smoke. It just depends on the duration of the smoke. This one I'm gonna get more smoke for a longer amount of time. This bowl, not as much. And then you see like silicone bowls, which they're good because they're durable and they come in all shapes and sizes, but they're not the best at retaining heat. Again, I typically recommend a clay bowl. This is a great one, but you know, you can get a great clay bowl for, you know, anywhere from $20 and up. All right, so the next myth or misconception is actually a new one to me, or at least it was the first time somebody's asked the question or said the statement. And it was, if you mix vape juice with your shisha flavor, will you get bigger clouds? The answer is actually yes. So if you mix vape juice, or if you mix something like the Shisha alternative paste into your bowl, you will get bigger clouds. But your clouds aren't going to be as white or dense or puffy. Like, they're a completely different kind of clouds. So like, if you ever watch somebody when they're vaping, their clouds are pretty gray. They're huge, but they're gray. They're not really that dense. Same thing when you see somebody smoking a cigarette, like they get like, again, the clouds are gray. Whereas you're used to, with Shisha at least, your clouds are like Snow White basically, and not the character, but like the color. Like, they're very white, and they're usually very dense if you're doing it right, and you just don't get the same feeling. So that's actually why I'm not a fan of mixing in like vape juice or like Shisha alternatives to my bowl, like any kind of paste or any kind of liquid that you drop in just to get, you know, more flavor or bigger clouds. Not knocking anyone that does it, because at least for the paste or the Shisha alternatives, like, some people do it because they don't want the nicotine. Some people do it because it's not available in their country, so they have to kind of settle for the alternatives. Some people do it just to add like a different flavor really quickly into their bowl. Again, it's not for me, so I'll leave that for you to decide. All right, now the next one is a very common one, and it's definitely one that I thought was true up until I was like, I don't even know, like 19 or 20. I used to think, and there's two, and they kind of go hand in hand, and it's, does more Shisha packed into your bowl equal more smoke? I thought this because I was like, oh, okay, if I put more in, then I'll probably get more smoke. And if I put more in, then I'll probably be able to smoke longer. And what I didn't realize is, the more that I'm stuffing into the bowl, the less air pockets there are in the bowl. And it makes it to where you compress it so much that it burns really easily, and you actually get a shorter session instead of a longer session. I hope I don't like offend anybody with this, but if I do, like, I'm glad I brought it to your attention. A lot of lounges used to, at least pre-pandemic, they used to grab a bowl like this and like they would just stuff it with Shisha, to the point where when they put the foil on it, there's actually like a little mountain in the middle, to where when you put the coals on, they're kind of just like hanging off the side, like holding on for dear life. That's terrible. Like, that's just not good. The reason for that, again, is you're overstuffing the bowl. You're making the session die out quicker than you normally would. You're using way too much Shisha, so it's just a waste of Shisha at that point. And also, it's not meant to be used that way. Your Shisha should be to the rim, or, you know, below the rim. It should never be like crazy overpacked. Kind of the same thing with big bowls. That was actually the next item. Like, does a bigger bowl necessarily mean a longer session? The answer there is, it depends, but more often than not, the answer is no. So just because a bowl is bigger, like this, for instance, this probably takes like 22 to 24 grams of Shisha. Whereas I mentioned this one takes significantly less. This is like 13 to 16 grams. So again, it really just depends on how good the bowl is in terms of the materials and how well you manage your heat. The takeaway from that myth is, just because you're putting more flavor in there doesn't mean that you're gonna get a longer session. Just because you're using a bigger bowl doesn't mean you're gonna get a longer session. It really comes down to the fundamentals, like make sure that you pack the bowl the right way, make sure you're using a high quality bowl, make sure that you're managing your heat properly. If you're using a heat management device, make sure you're using that the right way. So whether it be like a Provost or a Lotus, or whether you're just putting coal on foil, just make sure that you're doing it the best way possible, and you'll have a good experience, as opposed to just trying to overstuff your bowl. The next myth or misconception is fruit heads. Now, I don't know about you guys, but growing up, like, it was cool to like stunt or flex at the Shisha lounge, like, oh, I'm gonna pay $30 for the pineapple head, or oh, I'm gonna pay, you know, $40 for a watermelon head. I've seen that once, it was crazy. Really, those things are more for show purposes than they are for smoke purposes. So when you end up using a fruit head, there's this thing that happens that you may not realize is happening. The fruit head itself isn't completely empty. Like, there's still parts of the fruit in there, and there's usually juice from the fruit in there. So say you use a grapefruit head or a pineapple head, you're getting pineapple juice or, you know, grapefruit juice. That's great if, you know, you want to be able to kind of feel that flavor when you're smoking. But what's not great about it is you can't really tell when the Shisha in your bowl is burnt. So you might just keep smoking because that fruit is kind of keeping the session alive, and you won't even realize it, and you won't really be able to taste it because of the fruit head. For those of you out there that are like, oh, I get a longer session, or oh, I get more flavor. Yeah, but the flavor that you're getting is from the fruit, and the longer session that you're getting is you spending more time smoking burnt shisha. Again, it's up to you. Like, I get it, it looks cool. Lounges out there, I don't fault you for serving it, because, you know, if people want to buy it, people want to buy it. But again, just kind of raising awareness and trying to educate people on what's actually happening when they're using fruit head. I'm gonna be banned from some lounges. Overall, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I recommend clay bowls because they're the best at retaining heat, and they're kind of the best for your session overall. But yeah, outside of that, and you know, enjoy your fruit head. All right, so unfortunately I had way more content, but I didn't want the video to be ridiculously long, so I'm cutting this video in half. So this is part 1. Part 2 is coming really soon. In the meantime though, I really want to know what myths or misconceptions you guys have. Like, I know you've heard something growing up that I didn't cover. I really only covered, you know, just a fraction of what's out there. Like, I've heard way more ridiculous stuff. I just didn't feel like I could talk about it with a straight face. Feel free to drop that in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Moa Smokes. If there are any, you know, burning misconceptions or myths that you want debunked, feel free to hit me up on, again, either the comments or Instagram. I'll see you guys really soon, because there's a part 2 of this video that's probably dropping next week or in a couple of days. I haven't decided.